This is Duke University.
Global trade and environmental justice.
Human rights issues are still.
The term Ubuntu.
About the Alien and Sedition Acts.
Is making inferential discovery.
The importance of an archive.
The John Hope Franklin Center.
Hello, my name is Sedlin Mirtil, and I'll be presenting on charting resiliency in Haiti. And up here I have a clip from USAID, really tagging Haitians as the most resilient people on earth. And as a Haitian myself, I was really challenged by this and wanted to pinpoint the origins of this before I identified with this kind of almost paternalistic declarative. In order for me to even begin, I had to understand what resiliency was and really understand that humans are not passive systems of neurons and biological systems that register their exterior interactions, but in fact humans are active, and humans seek to find meaning and understanding in what they go through. And so in this we find the basis for the idea and notion of resiliency. Coming from the Latin word to bounce back, resiliency is basically an interaction of both one's personality traits, but also a combination in combination with the culture and community in which one finds meanings and to express like the events that one goes through. Even before we begin, I just wanted to hit two jingo fallacies before. One, I wanted to distinguish resiliency from ego resiliency and hardiness, which are basically personality traits. But I want to make sure that that we understand that resiliency is more so a dynamic process in which individuals go through after trauma. And so we find like the basic outline of what a resilient individual goes through. First, we have a challenge or a adversity or disruption, which is denoted as trauma, and then we have the biological processes of termed as the allostatic stress response. But after this is where we find the basis and the niche for resiliency. This is where we find where humans seek meaning and understanding. And following is the utilization of the resources that humans have in order to express the events. Resiliency results in three things. One, either positive coping methods. Second is long-term positive adaptation, and thirdly, mastery. And I wanted to hit on the mastery part of it, because mastery in psychology refers to self-knowledge, or more so in this self-knowledge we find that this is where culture and comes into play. And in Haitian culture, one of the biggest things that I note is that Haitians are very spiritual individuals, and spirituality should be like the center of where one finds meaning in life. And so I looked at spirituality as a source of meaning, and it's important to note that there's a difference between religion and spirituality, because spirituality is broader. It's one's relationship to God, but also one's relationship to self and community and surroundings. And this is where the second definition is where we find the connection between resiliency and spirituality. And so I really wanted to challenge the westernized psychology in which events don't really have a moralized or really seen as morally neutral. But I wanted to include spirituality and see the interaction between spirituality and resiliency and trauma. And so most experts note that positive religious coping, as you see up there, is negatively correlated to PTSD. And so like individuals that use these techniques, most likely they'll be able to cope with their traumatic events. But also there's also evidence that shows that both positive religious coping and negative religious coping are correlate to severe PTSD symptoms. So like we find that this issue is more complex than you see because spirituality in itself is more complex than one notes. And I try to myself like to conduct a pilot study in which I used two scales. One scale was to measure spirituality, and the second scale was to measure resiliency. And so I was trying to correlate to see whether or not the individuals who scored higher on spirituality scale were also scored higher on the resiliency scale. So the questionnaire was made up of 42 individuals, and as you see up there, these are the results of my study, my pilot study, and it's pretty inconclusive. The only thing I can get from this is that Haitians are indeed spiritual individuals, but there's nothing that correlates to resiliency, and it just speaks more about the complexity of the issue and how we need to really understand what spirituality is, because in one case, individuals that believe like positive religious coping is a good thing, we might find like the idea of spiritual bypass, in which spiritual bypass is basically the individuals is an overemphasis on the good side. So this leads to emotional denial and avoidance, which are characteristics of PTSD. So in fact, we find that if you use spirituality too much, it actually increases the symptoms of PTSD. So this is like one example of how the issue is more complex than one makes it out to be. And but this is that was basically my journey in trying to figure out whether or not I can identify with the declarative statements of USAID. So thank you.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.